Psalm 23, verse 2. He makes me lie down in green pastures, and he leads me beside quiet waters. Welcome to Devries Ministries. Now, taking the time to study Psalm 23 in greater depth has been an incredible eye-opening experience for me. I've known this psalm for as long as I can remember, but understanding it in context, not so much. As with many others, I suspect, I've often associated this psalm with where it is heard most often. And where is that? It would be at funerals. Now, Pasture told me that Psalm 23 is a hard one to preach on simply because they have to fight against the misconceptions of the psalm. You see, because it's a psalm for the living. It's not a psalm for the dead. The words of this psalm are for the living, for those who are going through anxious times. They are words that are meant to bring comfort. Are you familiar with the feelings of being anxious? Are you in a place or a time in your life where worry and anxiety are your constant companion? Or how about anger? Anger because of the anxiety and worry that you are carrying. Are they a companion? Are they a companion? Now, sometimes as a Christian, I think we can make a sweeping statement like, don't worry, God's got it, He's in control. And this is very true. Hear me well. It is very, very true. But in these times of terrible anxiousness, of worry, of anger, I think that we need to allow ourselves and others to feel. We need to allow others to voice their concerns, their misgivings, allow them to be vulnerable, to be raw, because life is real. And the hard stuff of life, it's very hard sometimes. And it's from this place of raw feelings, of honesty, that we can go to a psalm like Psalm 23. And remember, David wrote this psalm while living, while going through the ups and downs of anything but an easy life. Now, as a reminder, I stated it last week, but as a reminder, David was on the run from King Saul for many years. And once he was placed king over Israel, he was constantly being chased by his enemies, the Philistines. His best friend, Jonathan, was tragically killed. His first son from Bathsheba, he died. His favorite son, Absalom, took the throne from him, and David was on the run from him. But then Absalom was killed, and David mourned deeply. He cried out, saying he would have rather died instead of Absalom. Life for David was hard. His life was full of trouble, uncertainties, crises, and losses. In different times, different place, in a different culture. But I'm thinking that David 100% would be able to identify with us today in our places of trouble, in our places of uncertainty, crises, and losses. In Psalm 13, verse 1, David actually cried out, "How long will you look the other way, God?" In Psalm 69, verse 1, David says, "Save me, O God, for the flood waters are up to my neck." Psalm 86, David pens, "Bend down, O Lord, and hear my prayer. Hear me, I need your help." Can you relate to David? Because I can guarantee you that if David was here with us today, he could relate to us. So it's with fresh eyes that I am seeing the beauty, the hope, and the promise found in David's proclamation and his statements of truth. Because despite all David's hardships, he begins Psalm 23 with, "The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not be in want." And then from there, in the following verses, David tells us what that means. He tells us what God offered him. He tells us where God met him. And God doesn't change. Therefore, what he offered David, he offers to you and I. And he begins with, "He makes me lie down in green pastures, and he leads me beside still waters." Here's the thing. When it comes to green pastures, our dictionaries paint a picture of a wide open field full of lush, inviting grass with perhaps a few trees. The sun is shining. I basically think of a beautiful, serene meadow. Now, by our dictionary's definition in 2021, it sounds like somewhere where one might want to have a picnic, enjoy the warmth of a perfect summer day, or poetically or figuratively, by our 2021 dictionary's definition, one would think of maybe being brought to a place where there is an abundance of all that one may need and want, a comfy, carefree life, free from troubles. But contrary to Western imagery, the desert was the landscape of the ancient shepherd, and the green pastures were often few and far between and offered little more than small sprigs of grass, a little here and a little there. I was told by a friend who has been to Israel that the land is full of hills and it's mainly rocky and sandy. There is nothing lush about it. And this is a landscape where the shepherd took care of his flock. There's not a lot of grass, especially in the dry season. Yes, they do have a rainy season, which makes it a wee bit more plentiful, but it's never lush and green, like my romantic idea of what it means to lie in green pastures. David is not writing about a meadow as we know it here in North America. No, he's speaking about pastures he knows in his time and in his place. David is not saying that God will lead us to lush green pastures where we can gorge ourselves and be set up for the rest of our lives. That was not the experience of David. And I suspect it's not the experience of many who are listening. No, David is saying that our shepherd, his shepherd, will lead us day by day, giving us what we need day by day, now in the moments where we find ourselves in. David is saying that in the middle of our chaos, God will give us all we need. He will lead us to the sprig of grass here and to a sprig of grass there. And then tomorrow, we can trust that our shepherd will lead us where we need to be for tomorrow. This is how God leads us in the real places of life, in the real places of hardship. A small patch of grass here and a small patch of grass there. Now, what in the world does this mean to you and I? What is our green pasture? What is our shepherd promising us? Well, maybe in part it's this. Maybe you are exhausted, my friend, because you're having to care for your mother who has Alzheimer's. She is not the woman you know anymore. When you look at her physically, yes, sure, she still looks the same, but her mind is different. The mom you knew her as is gone. Maybe now she's argumentative, she's difficult, and maybe she's not able to take care of her physical needs, and maybe she doesn't even see the need to take care of herself physically. Reasoning is gone. Maybe she calls you many times a week with what seems to be unnecessary worries and maybe even troublesome paranoia. And maybe the care of your mother has fallen completely on you, and you are angry, and you just don't want to do it anymore because you're tired. Your feelings are so real. They are so understandable. The question I have is, do you think that David could relate to you? Because I do. And from this place, this tiresome place, are you willing to declare that the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want? Which means, my friend, as you travel this tough road of caring for your mom, your shepherd promised you he will be with you. He will lead you. But it's one day at a time. And each day he will bring you to a pasture like the one in David's day, one where for today only, you will have just enough strength, just enough peace, just enough rest to make it through to tomorrow. Are you willing to take God at his word and follow where he is leading you one day at a time, my friend? Are you willing to expect enough from your shepherd for today? Psalm 23, verse 2 was written for you. It was written for you. And he will make you lie down in green pastures, and he will lead you beside still waters. Or maybe does it mean that as you watch your grandchild who is very, very sick and suffering with a mental illness that is so cruel? It's so cruel. How can such a young, beautiful child suffer so terribly? How can such a crisis hit your family? It just doesn't make sense. And what if you're watching not only your grandchild suffer in terrible way, but you're also watching your grandchild, but you're also watching your own child's heart breaking in a way that a parent's heart was never meant to be broken? What if tears of fear, anger, and exhaustion are part of the whole family's daily routine right now? Oh, my friend, the pain, it's real. And I suspect that the prayers of Psalm 13, Psalm 69, and Psalm 86 are very real to you. How long will you look the other way? Oh God, how long? Save us, oh God, for the floodwaters are up to our necks. Bend down, oh Lord, and hear our prayers. Answer us, for we need your help. Is it possible that Psalm 23 was written for you? A psalm of hope and promise in the midst of the horribly unbelievable, in the ununderstandable. Is it possible that Psalm 23 verse 2, he makes me lie down in green pasture and he leads me beside still waters, was written specifically for your family for such a time as this? For someone who could relate to the deep pains that comes one's way as we travel the deserts of life. Is it possible that your shepherd is promising to be with you day in, day out, not leaving your side, actually even leading you? Is it possible that your shepherd is promising you to give you a David-like, if you will, green pastures? Which means you can bravely and boldly expect enough strength, determination, and even a peace that is completely beyond understanding, completely beyond. In the midst of the great storm, one day at a time, one hurdle at a time, one crisis at a time. Is this what it means to lie in green pastures? Psalm 23 was written for those who are going through difficult times. And quite frankly, for me, it's perfect. Psalm 23 meets us in the reality of life. It meets us in our crises, and its promises are as real as the troubles that we face. Our shepherd is leading us. Our shepherd will keep us moving, and day after day, he will provide green pastures. But remember, it's a sprig of grass here and a sprig of grass there, and it's just the right amount of strength to keep us moving and keep us trusting, and we'll make it. Because the Lord is your shepherd, and we shall not be in want. Put your name in the stories that I just shared with you. What is your storm? What is your trouble? When we find ourselves in the pressure cooker of life, our shepherd promises us that day by day, he will bring us from pasture to pasture. Trust him. Follow him. One day at a time, my friends, one day at a time. Amen.